If religion were true, its followers would not try to bludgeon their young into artificial conformity, but would merely insist on their unbending quest for truth, irrespective of artificial backgrounds or practical consequences.
For the time will come when people will not put up with sound teachings. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers who say what their itching ears want to hear. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths.
The oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest and strongest kind of fear is fear of the unknown.
Be not afraid. Keep on speaking. Do not be silent. We were just scrolling through what was new uploads today, and we came across reasons to believe. And it's hard to look away from neurochemistry of attachment supports a Christian sexual ethic. I have a feeling they don't know what a Christian sexual ethic actually means. How about you, Ferret?
Christian sexual ethic is no sex at all until you're married.
And then you fuck your wife and your wife's concubines and your other wife and her concubines and whoever you happen to get your hands on. And if you're not married, well then just rape a bitch. Then you'll be married to her.
Welcome. My name is George Haraxon. I serve here at Reasons to Believe as the RTB Scholar and Apologetics Community Director. And I also get to serve as an adjunct professor of philosophy and ethics.
Hi, I'm Otter. I serve on the internet as a punching bag. Who cares? Why do we care, dude? Why do we give a shit? Where? Where do you serve as an adjunct professor of philosophy and ethics? You didn't list an actual college. He is a professor of philosophy and religion at Veritas International University, a non-profit Christian university located in Santa Fe, California. It is allowed to offer the following accredited degrees: a Bachelor in Christian Studies, a Master in Theological Studies, a Master in Biblical Studies, a Master in Christian Apologetics, a Master of Arts in Archaeology and Biblical History, a Master of Divinity in Biblical History, a Master of Divinity in Apologetics, a Doctor of Ministry in Apologetics, and a Doctor of Philosophy. But you can't offer any real programs? How much does a Master of Arts in Archaeology and Biblical History mean if you're not accredited to offer any kind of degree in real history? That actively says so much about your actual accreditation. He has degrees in computer science, theology, and apologetics, and a PhD in philosophy. Is it a Christian PhD? Is it Christian philosophy? Oh, wow. 17 seconds in, you've wasted your video thus far, and you've already blown any respect I had for you out of the water. What you got to say?
Today, I'm joined by Dr. Miguel Endura, and we're going to ask the question...
Oh, no, I misunderstood the direction of your conversation. You've laid out your credentials on the table as if you're flopping down a big, fat, thick dick, but in reality, it's like a chopped up hot dog. So that you can introduce someone else.
Let's hope he's actually good.
So about that, the person whose credentials we just looked up, that's the person he's introducing.
What the fuck?
Why did you lay your credentials on the table? Your credentials mean fuck all in this context. Dude, you could have come out here saying, I have 7 doctorates from Harvard in all of these sciences, and I'm here to introduce this clown. No one gives a fuck what your credentials are. You're introducing the circus.
And talk about the Christian sexual ethic, specifically Augustine's sexual ethic or his understanding of the Christian sexual ethic, and has science, specifically neurochemistry, confirmed or disconfirmed what Christians have thought down through the ages.
Back up. We're going to be taught neurochemistry by a computer science and philosophy major.
To be honest, we're not qualified either.
But they're presenting him as qualified. We don't present ourselves as qualified. Like, fuck do we present? Okay, dropping some hot truth here. I have 3 degrees. When I say that, immediately every religious person went, oh, he's got like a high school diploma. Okay, if we count high school graduation, I have 4 degrees, actually. A bachelor's degree and 2 associates. I don't claim to be knowledgeable about these subjects more than someone who's using their brain and actually paying attention.
I have a high school graduation. That's about it. I graduated good, though.
And yet, we are equally qualified to speak on neurochemistry as your expert that you've brought on your show. This is going to be good.
So, Miguel, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, George. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you just want to talk about very light and easy subjects, I
That's
see.
right.
So you've done a fair amount of work on St. Augustine, understanding his ethic and his understanding of the Christian ethic.
Known as St. Augustine, a theologian and philosopher, the Bishop of Hippo, his writings influenced Western philosophy and Christianity. He is a saint in the Catholic Church. In the East, his teachings are disputed and were notably attacked by John Romanides. Other theologians and figures of the Church have shown significant approbation of his writings, chiefly Florovsky. The most controversial doctrine associated with him, the Filioque, was rejected by the Orthodox Church. What's the Filioque? Ho, 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 ho.
Did you realize something?
I think I did. He's one of the Nicene Fathers that does not believe in a Trinity.
Oh.
You know, a viewpoint that modern Judeo-Christianism really does not espouse. He was among the earliest to examine the legitimacy of laws of man and define the boundaries of what laws and rights occur naturally instead of being arbitrarily imposed by morals. Moral law should not attempt to force people to do what is right or avoid what is wrong, but simply to remain just. Therefore, an unjust law is no law at all. People are not obligated to obey laws that are unjust, those that their conscience and reason tells them to violate natural laws and rights. He instructed people to free their slaves. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
He was actually pretty ahead of his time. That's against what the Bible says. God did not intend that this rational creature who was made in his image should have dominion over anything but the irrational creature. Not man over man, but man over the beasts. It's a real shame the Bible disagrees with you, but that's awesome. Glad you were ahead of your own time. The evil of sexual immorality was not the act itself, but the emotions that accompany it.
What?
In his book, he contrasts love, which is enjoyment on account of God, and lust, which is not on account of God. He claims that, following the fall, lust has become necessary for copulation, as required to stimulate the male erection. Lust is a result of the fall, therefore evil must accompany sexual intercourse. Therefore, following the fall, even marital sex carried out merely to procreate inevitably perpetuates evil. To him, proper love exercises a denial of selfish pleasure and the subjugation of corporeal desire to God. The only way to avoid evil caused by intercourse is to take a better way and abstain from marriage, as per Corinthians. Sex within marriage is not, however, a sin, although necessarily producing evil. Based on the same logic, he declared the pious virgins raped during the sack of Rome to be innocent because they did not intend to sin nor enjoy the act. Okay, once again, coming from a weird angle on it, but this guy was actually kind of ahead of his time, it sounds like. Because he's coming at it of, hey, the girl has not sinned just because she was raped. She didn't consent to the act. It's not sin for her. During a time period when, again, even according to the Bible, if the woman sinned, she was the one that committed crimes. He censured those who tried to prevent the creation of offspring when engaging in sexual relations, saying that though they may be nominally married, they are not really. And they are using that designation as a cloak for torpiditude. Interesting. How then? How is this guy and his suggestions going to support a Christian sexual ethic?
Didn't I say it was most likely going to be about, the not having sex until marriage?
But he says even if you have sex in marriage, you're sinning. Let's actually let him talk and find out. We've done a lot of research out of the gate. Let's see what he has to say.
Maybe the first thing you could do is just maybe describe what was his view of the Christian sexual ethic.
Yes. Yes, for Augustine, we have to understand, to use a current term, is very conservative in this theology. So, yes, he's one of the ones that founded Christian theology. He put the ideas of the Bible together in such a way that it was coherent, that it made sense.
And he didn't believe in the Trinity. But yes, you are correct. He is one of the major founders of Christian theology.
And he especially did this regarding sexual morality. The sexual morality in the Bible is talked about in different places, but never in one place is it put together.
Is there any one place in the Bible any concept is put together?
Not really.
It just feels like you're talking in circles here to try and work around the fact that the dude believed that sex was a sin no matter what.
Now, for Augustine, he advocates the sexual ethic most of us grew up with.
You grew up with all sex is bad sex?
And you shouldn't have sex at all? Remain chaste?
That we are to express ourselves sexually only within the context of marriage.
No.
You're half telling the truth. The other half, and the vast majority of his teachings that set him apart from his people and his peers at the time, was that even in marriage, it is a sin.
And marriage is between a man and a woman.
I feel like you threw that in out of nowhere, but yes, you're correct.
And so what you've been researching is, this is sort of in the Judeo-Christian view, at least historically. It gets challenged in different times throughout the ages. Particularly in our day, it's challenged quite a bit. What have we been finding from neurochemistry, from science, that either confirms or disconfirms this view of the Christian sexual ethic?
At least you said disconfirms.
He said disconfirms, but we already know it confirms based on the title, but we just skipped several fucking steps.
Oh?
He was like, can you give a vague overview on why this person agreed with my viewpoint? And the guy kind of half-assed his response, and then it was like, all right, so how does neurochemistry answer it? He's not qualified to answer that question. And based on his answer to the question that he was supposedly qualified according to his degrees to answer, he's not qualified to answer what he wants for breakfast.
I wrote an article for the Catholic Bioethics Quarterly. It was published earlier this year, 2021.
Ah, yes. How to tell that neurochemistry proved something when it had to be published in the
Catholic Bioethics Quarterly.
It sounds like the height of scientific reason and knowledge.
How many times was it peer-reviewed by different people with many different opinions?
Do they link by any chance to the paper? Dig deeper.
Ooh.
He has written chapters for books. His articles have appeared in professional journals, such as the National Catholic Bioethics Quarterly. I'm gonna level with you here, guys. We need to start redefining the word professional, because trying to say that that's a professional journal suggests that it's on par with actual scientific peer-reviewed journals. Under the same qualifications, are you familiar with a little publication called Shonen Jump? It posts professional articles that give thought and reason. Hell, let's take a step back, because Shonen Jump is mostly fiction. Under this same concept, someone could reasonably write, his articles have appeared in professional journals, such as Playboy. That's the same level of quality that we're talking here.
To be honest, I trust Playboy more.
Let's hear what the computer technician has to say about neurochemistry.
Let's do this.
And there I explain that science actually sustains what Augustine says.
That sex is based on lust in the wake of the fall, and that lust is evil and immoral?
That we should be doing it, and we should be, making ourselves extinct from lack of sex.
He said it's holy to not have sex, and that he understands we have to have sex, and if we do, it had better only be for procreation, and even then we better say some Hail Marys. I don't think you know what your own research subject said, or you're deliberately misinterpreting it.
The science backs up what he says. How so? That's a big claim, isn't it? Mm-hmm. How does it do that?
That's a good question. You going to answer it?
According to neurochemists, whenever people engage in a sexual relationship, a number of hormones are released.
Yeah, they are.
Oh, yeah.
Amongst these, the most relevant ones are oxytocin, mainly released in women, vasopressin, released in men more than in women, and dopamine. But there are many, many other hormones released, and especially vasopressin and oxytocin. These are known as hormones of attachment, hormones that promote pair bonding. Pair bonding in monogamous they help create monogamous relationships in animals.
I love pair bonding. Pair bonding is a thing that happens constantly without even sex happening. Literally, you can pair bond with animals. Not sexually, though. That'd be weird.
Please don't fuck your dog.
Loyalty hormones can be created after a long-term relationship, even without sex. It's actually amazing how quickly we can bond with things.
Ferret regularly pack bonds with a Roomba.
But it's so cute.
Also, scientifically speaking, what does pair bonding have to do with Christian sexual ethic? If anything, pair bonding makes absolute sense under evolution. Those who release the hormones that cause them to pair bond better are more likely to stick together long enough to care for a child better. Whereas you can see in species that lack the pair bonding trait, they have sex, they disappear from each other again the next day. That works fine for those species which don't need both partners, but when you need both partners, it's going to be sexually selected for. What does this have to do with monogamy? You can be pair-bound with a large number of creatures at once. Obviously not in a sexual way, but in a neurochemistry way. I am pair-bound with Ferret. I am pair-bound with my brother. I am pair-bound with my cats. Hell, to a certain degree, I'm pair-bound with one of my brother's cats, the little fat ass. So that's 3 cats, 2 people. I am pair-bound with 5 people. Where does monogamy enter into this? When the human brain that releases these chemicals is able to non-sexually pair bond with more than one person, with no conflict and absolute ease. You found one individual fact that falls within an individual thing, and you're trying to ascribe it meaning.
Now, I'm sure there's difference between the brain chemicals of people you're pair bonded with and mated with, but that's sort of a blurred line.
But also in human beings. Most of the studies have been done on animals, but scientists are connecting these studies to what goes on in the brains of human beings as well.
So that uniting of the male and female in this case,
yes,
creates some sort of attachment. Now you can think of the science of it and those chemicals being released. Kind of, what do you mean by that attachment? Are these feelings that are coming in the person? How more would you describe that?
Here's a question for you. If the act of sex triggers this release, why does it have to be between a male and a female? Gay sex releases these chemicals just as well.
They do.
Aren't you kind of bashing your own argument and suggesting that gay sex is just as legitimate?
Now, vasopressin and oxytocin, they have to do not only with romantic love, but with other types of attachments, other types of social bonds. But in the context of sexual expression, they have to do with romantic bonding. They have to do with, feelings of attachments, feelings of trust. According to scientists, if we just hug somebody for 20, 30 seconds, the hormone in women, oxytocin, gets released, but it gets released in in relatively small amounts.
Only women? Only women. Men don't feel happy over being hugged. Only women. Also, yes, just from being hugged. Because all it takes is looking at another person and we can pack bond with them.
Yeah, that's a problem.
When it comes to expressing ourselves sexually, it gets released in relatively great amounts. But these hormones make us trust the person with whom we're with.
What's your point? What's your point?
When was the last time you pair bonded with someone?
Well, his point appears to be that it releases more when we do this, therefore this is the way we should be doing things. So I'm going to guess, sir, that you never watch a horror movie or a thriller or anything with suspense. You've never read a book where you didn't know the ending, because that tense feeling, that jittery feeling of not quite knowing, oh, I'm so nervous, something's going to jump out of me. Oh, God, it jumped. Well, I mean, yeah, that releases a relatively small amount. But getting stabbed in the liver releases a shit ton. Why aren't you out here just getting stabbed in the liver? That is clearly how you are intended to receive that emotion and the chemical feelings.
And so our physiology, the way God created us, helps us to bind with our spouse for a lifetime.
Correction and rephrasing. A sexual trait that was sexually selected for that allows for better rearing of children by keeping mated couples together with each other for at least a slightly longer period of time has continued and been sexually selected for throughout the course of humanity. And if anything, the fact that we can experience this emotional connection and it becomes stronger when we have sex supports the idea that we should be pack bonding. That we should be realistically having sex with a group of, say, 5 to 10 people all interbreeding. This keeps the gene pool more diverse. It allows for more members to help assist in protecting the young, and it allows for better connection between all parties. You've kind of shot your own argument in the foot.
It helps us have deep and abiding relationships with our spouse.
It facilitates two partners staying close together. That is all.
So with that, I'm thinking of an analogy. You know, I could, if I'm doing woodworking or that, I might put together two pieces of wood with glue. And that glue binds them together. And the longer it dries and things like that, the harder it is to separate. Or if you do separate it, there's a deep severing. And it sounds like
that's right.
That's what we're finding in science.
No, the glue needs a specific amount of time to dry. More drying will not make it any more firm. If anything, you get a better bond by not just gluing it, but instead using various methods of intermeshing the two. What's your analogy? And the glue wears off. Like, glue is notorious for wearing off.
Is that this bond is created, it gets deeper and deeper, and to separate those two, just have them really...
He never said anything about it gets deeper and deeper, did he?
Not that I remember.
He said the bond exists, and that more of the chemical that creates the bond is released when you bang uglies, of which he just assumed that only men and women can bang uglies and release the chemical, which is not true.
Is this why the Apostle Paul talks about kind of the uniting of man and woman as a head and body, that it's a deep unity?
Yeah, 1 Corinthians 7, I wish that all men were as I am, but each man has his own gift from God. One has his gift, another has that. Now to the unmarried and the widows, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried as I am. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. Paul is saying that it's vitally important that they're the same person. Yes, but he said it was more important that they never become the same person.
It's a deep unity. The problem is, as you allude to, George, when people engage in sexual affairs, sexual liaisons, that with people that they just meet once or twice, and they just go from affair to affair to affair, to continue to use your tape analogy. If we use tape once, it'll work well. If we use it another time, it'll work less well. If we continue to use it in that way, then the potency, the power of the tape diminishes.
He used a glue analogy, not a tape analogy. Also, A tape analogy doesn't work in the slightest because the chemicals continue to release exactly the same no matter how many partners are involved. You're straying outside of the neurochemistry that you are desperately trying to hold up as your example, and now you're just talking out your ass. More so than you already were.
It won't. The tape won't work anymore. It won't work as well. So it is with oxytocin, the vasopressin. If we use it in many casual affairs, then they will lose the power of binding to people, and the problem when that happens, the problem is that other hormones, you could say, take over.
No matter how many times you do that, there's always a chance you will fully bond with someone and decide to stay with them. Just because you've been sleeping around doesn't mean you can't connect with someone. That's very shallow of you, but that's what I've come to expect.
Is your suggestion going to be the similar concept that if you continually receive dopamine hits, that your receptors eventually start rejecting dopamine and not accepting it at the same rate? Except you still receive dopamine. And on top of that, your receptors can go back to normal if you stop doing the activity that's providing you the exact same dopamine, or if you just simply change up the activity. The dopamine hit from, say, gambling is not going to be the same as the dopamine hit from, say, winning a game. But if you continuously win, then that dopamine hit is going to eventually get worn down, the same as continuously gambling, or doing drugs is usually the best example. Doing drugs or drinking alcohol. But you're going to get different dopamine hits from doing heroin and crack. And they're not dependent on each other. So by that same logic, obviously, I don't know the science, and frankly, neither do you, computer technician. But under that same circumstance, it would make sense to me. Let's say I get 10 cc's of pack bonding juice by fucking Jenny, and I get 10 cc's of pack bonding juice by fucking Harold. They're both going to provide me with 10 cc's of pack bonding juice because they're two different sources. Now, ironically, under your own suggestion, if I fuck Harold again, I'm now only going to receive 8 cc's of pack bonding juice. And by the time I've been in a 10-year relationship with Harold, I'm going to be lucky if I can get one.
So in this case, maybe you could say a hormone like dopamine, which makes us feel good, takes over. So the person who has many sexual liaisons will remember the pleasure that person received while expressing themselves sexually. And they'll seek after the pleasure and not so much the binding effect, not so much binding with the other person. And that creates another problem.
How so? I can say something creates a problem all day, but I'm a little lost as to how either of those things create a problem.
People who have had many sexual liaisons, when they're ready to get married and settle down, find that it's very, very hard to do so. Their physiology actually works against them. They no longer have this capacity, so it's very tough.
Wait, is he backing me up? That you'll get more cc's of juice if you fuck around than if you fuck one person? And if you fuck one person, you will always receive less cc's of juice? So therefore, neurochemistry suggests that the human body is wired to fuck lots of people and never one person?
I don't know.
I think he just admitted that that's what he's saying. And that he's trying desperately, really, really desperately, to say that's not a real thing and that it's a bad thing that should be avoided. So let me get this straight. When neurochemistry says that we release chemicals that bond us with other people, that means we're meant to be monogamous. But when neurochemistry says we release even more happy juice and bonding chemicals if we fuck 5 people, that's bad. That's evil. We're supposed to be monogamous. Oh my god, confirmation bias for fucking weeks out here.
I'm not saying that it never happens, but it just works against them. Why? Because they have acted in a way that's contrary to the sexual ethic. It's contrary also to the way Augustine explains it.
They have difficulty because they've reacted differently than to the sexual ethic. Then perhaps the sexual ethic is wrong. And I say that as a monogamous partner, Perhaps, under that definition, the sexual ethic is wrong. If murdering people was a matter of, Jimmy, I know you want to, but make sure you never stab a motherfucker in an alleyway. Because if you do, it's going to be real hard to not going back to stabbing motherfuckers in alleys, Jimmy. And our ethics say you can't stab a motherfucker in an alley, so never do it. I know, I want to stab him too, Jimmy. It'll be so good to stab him, but... I mean, look at him, Jimmy. He's even got his shirt open. You could just take the knife, right there, 3 ribs down. You see the little mark, Jimmy? Oh, yes. Oh, God, I'm being so sinful. Our ethics says we can't just stab people, and if I start stabbing people, then I'll just keep on stabbing. I don't feel like that's a problem human beings have. Obviously, sometimes people go off to war and they come back and their brain is fucked up and they start doing that. But for the most part, they come back and they go, oh, God, that was fuck awful. I never want to kill another person. I never want to see another person die. I'm traumatized. And that's why we have an ethic that says, don't go stab motherfuckers in alleys. It's not okay. But perhaps when we flip the tables, you can hear how stupid your sexual ethic sounds.
One of the main characteristics of the sexual relationships for Augustine is what he calls sacrament. The idea here is that God loves us in an everlasting manner. God's love for us never goes away. And so also the marriage bond should be one of permanence. And
I was concerned that just simply by reading a quick article, I wouldn't understand enough of Augustine's teachings to be able to respond to you, and I would just have to take whatever you say at face value. But just from reading a little bit about him, I think I know more about the saint than you do, motherfucker. His concept of sacrament was that sex is holy, lust is evil, and that lust is the result of evil, but that you can still be holy even through sex if you did not experience lust. You touch on occasional things that he said, and it's like watching a drunk person try to drive. They touch on the correct side of the road, and then they veer all over the fucking place for a little while. And then they see the cop coming up, and they flip back into their road.
And so there's an analogy there between the love between the spouses, which is a permanent love, and God's love, which is also permanent. And that's the analogy he draws for marriage.
So we're saying that there's already a purpose, an intention, a design in the marital relationship. And you want to be careful about going against that design because of the lack of attachment, the lack of bonding. But yet we're hearing that science seems to be confirming rather than disconfirming that built into even our neurochemistry, it's already pre-set up so that we would bond with the mate that we're designed to be a part of. Am I hearing that correct?
No, you're not. You are declaring that 2 people, a man and a woman, are meant to be monogamous. What the neurochemistry is informing you is that if you have sex with someone, you will pack bond with them. And as you've already established, the more people you have sex with, the more chemicals will be released. Whereas if you only have sex with one person, you will receive less and less and less and less and less of those chemicals over time. And also, the neurochemistry says that there's no difference between a man and a woman fucking, a woman and a woman fucking, and 2 men fucking. It's as if all you want to hear is, when we fuck, we release chemicals. And everything else after that fact is coming from your own head.
Well, I'm sure you already were saying this, but you will continue to receive the happy chemicals, even if you fuck the same person over and over again.
Yes, I will continue to receive the happy chemicals, even if for the rest of my life I do heroin every day. It will just be less of the happy chemicals.
No, it's the same amount. You're just less sensitive to it.
Okay, yes, it releases the same amount, but my body takes in less of them. So yes, not saying it's bad to fuck the same person every day.
Yeah.
I'm just saying your entire argument appears to be we are meant to eat cookies. When we eat from the cookie jar, we receive cookies. That cookie jar is designed for us. There are millions of other cookie jars, all also containing cookies, but we may not eat of them because then we'll realize there's a shit ton of cookies. And as our cookie jar slowly empties, we will receive less and less cookies. but that's the way it was meant to be. So don't you dare eat from the other cookie jars, or you'll figure out we're wrong. How do people buy into this shit?
You did.
That is exactly right, George. We are created by God to enter into marital relationships. I realize not everybody, God doesn't call everybody to marry, but for those of us who are called to marriage, we are created to bind with one person and to continually deepen that bond. So that's what God created us for.
Is that why Solomon, one of God's chosen men, fucked over 300 women? You want to sit here and chat shit about it, but everyone God picked, Abraham, David, Solomon, every single Lot, he saved Lot's life specifically. Every Bible hero had multiple female sexual partners. Up until, mysteriously, the New Testament, when society had begun to say that monogamy was cool. And suddenly the Bible starts to reflect more that monogamy is cool. Still doesn't outright say anywhere that you must be monogamous, because having multiple wives was still fine. It's kind of like how the Bible never actually condemns female on female homosexuality. Because that shit's hot. And because you had multiple wives. And sometimes you want to bang both at once. And it might be a problem if them being together like that is a sin. I'm not even sure you two believe this. The way you're talking about it, the way you're acting towards it, it's hard to believe that the two of you believe what you're saying proves what you believe. That you don't both know full well that you're talking shit. And you're just trying to desperately make it sound good, like you're a 16-year-old trying to give their high school public presentation in front of the class when they threw it together last night.
If we go against it, we not only go against God, we go against ourselves.
We're already going against ourselves in doing this sort of thing. By being chaste, we're going against our most lizard brain urges. If he didn't want us to be us, he should have made us better.
On top of that, you already admitted that the emotional self that we'll receive by fucking a ton of people is superior to what we will receive by being monogamous and forming that pair bond. And the only reason we should form that pair bond is because you say God says so. So how are we going against ourselves to do that? You can only reasonably argue from your own position that we're going against God.
That's what's so interesting about this. God's moral law is given to us for our benefit. It's given to us because God loves us, because of God's grace towards us.
Where does grace enter into any of this?
We go against it. We go against it at our own peril.
I'm pretty sure there's no peril involved. As long as I don't get an STD, I can fuck as many people as I want for the rest of my life and never get married. I don't see what peril there is to me in that. There's no peril in the Bible listed about that, and you have yet to reasonably present any peril or unreasonably present any peril. Peril has just entered into the conversation, I would say from nowhere, but I was the last person to bring up peril. How's your liver, boo?
I'm sure he's talking about hell, but...
Oh my god, that went right over my head. I didn't even consider that's what he was on about.
Miguel, I was thinking, I was...
Rarity for you, ain't it?
I don't just teach philosophy, but I was a pastor for 20 years and had to do a lot of counseling, both premarital, marital, and even crisis and divorce, and care for people through those different stages.
Man, all I just heard was I have, 20 years of fucking up people's lives and ruining them and actively hurting them. Pastoral fucking counseling. Get fucked. That's the most you deserve there. Get fucked.
It can sound like that this research almost then that we're irrevocably damaged, but that's not really the case.
This research, I'm assuming you're referring to the neurochemistry that suggests that we receive pair bonding juice when we fuck, suggests we're irrevocably damaged? the fuck are you on?
You just don't leave it at the neurochemistry, but you also talk a little bit about the spiritual side. There's another part to this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe God is in the business of restoring people. God is in the business of redeeming people.
Yeah, that business of restoring and redeeming people, as he damns people who literally never did anything wrong that mattered or had ever heard of him to hell. So restored and redeemed.
So through his love, by means of his grace, there is hope for those people who have not led sexual lives according to God's moral principles.
And that's how it ends? Hang on, you've got almost 33,000 subscribers, and that's how it ends? What'd he say after that you didn't want us to hear? Holy shit. Well, in retrospect, they destroyed their own argument. They gave a fantastic discussion on why you should fuck around if you have the emotional maturity to do so, and how you'll have a better, more interactive and engaging life if you do that, and that the only downside will be that you'll make God sad.
And STDs, keep that in mind. Okay?
They never mentioned that.
We should remind people that STDs exist. But the condoms do help. You should get your stuff checked often, just in case. It's called taking care of your body, and you should do that.
So, with that said, go upset God today. Go fuck some bitches. That goes for both sides. Or if you're gay, some dudes who are bitches. This got away from me. Have a good day.